Welcome back to another edition of Unbashful. I, of course, am your host, Nicholas Doucette, and this is a late one for me. By the time you guys watch this, it's probably going to be a couple of days from now, but it's about, what time is it right now? It's 4:42 a.m., and I just can't sleep for some reason, and the Oscars just went down, and I was gonna make an episode about this regardless, but that was gonna be later tomorrow. Well, I guess today. But I thought, fuck it, let's just talk about it now. I'm awake. I'm good to go. So let's go over all the winners. And keep in mind, this is gonna be a pretty informal discussion as a podcast is, and I don't really have any notes. This is sort of my kind of raw thoughts, so to speak, about what I thought about the Oscars and if I thought if all the winners deserved it or not, and so on and so forth. But just so I don't forget, let me pull up Oscar winners 2023. Okay, let's get the list up here. Okay, so all right, so yeah, just to give you my general thoughts, it started out a little shaky. All Quiet on the Western Front, mind you, this is a movie that I haven't seen, so I can't really go too in depth. But it was taking home a lot of awards in the beginning. It won Best International Film. It won quite a few other awards. And it seemed like, it didn't obviously end up continuing, but it seemed like that was maybe an early sign for even more awards to come, and maybe a trend that was about to happen for the rest of the evening. Like I was talking to my friends, and it seemed like, damn, like, is this movie gonna start collecting like screenplay, best picture, maybe even some of the acting awards? But obviously a lot of it ended up going to Everything Everywhere, which was the movie that I was rooting for. So it ended good when we got to the heavy hitter awards, like, acting and screenplay, directing. That one exactly as I would have picked. Except for Women Talking. I think Women Talking won best original screenplay, I think Woman Talking won best adapted screenplay, and I would have picked Glass Onion to win that. But other than that, I mean, all the heavy hitter awards went to Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was the film that I thought should win Best Picture. It's funny, going into these Oscars, I knew there was a lot of hype for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I knew that there was a lot of campaigning for it, and there was sort of a resurgence in discussion and popularity. But I just had this feeling that Banshees was going to get the lion's share of the awards. And look, Banshees is a good film, and if it had won some of these awards, I wouldn't be over the moon, I wouldn't be upset, I wouldn't be mad or anything like that. But I don't know, there's something about Everything Everywhere, especially with this surge of the multiverse, and this is sort of becoming the new MacGuffin of Hollywood. I think they've done it the best so far. And you just, beyond the multiverse aspect of Everything Everywhere, it's a great family drama. It just implements so many, like, I'm not gonna go over and over. I've talked about how much I enjoy the film, but I've mentioned this before, like, and I don't throw this sort of whatever feeling around, because I don't feel it very often. But when I walked out of Everything Everywhere All at Once, I felt euphoric. It had an effect that I'd never felt. Like, you watch a movie, you usually feel something, not every time. Some movies are more, forgettable or disposable than others, but, generally speaking, you feel something, even if you hated the film. you walked out feeling disappointed, like you wasted your time and money. And then in the inverse, you watch a really good movie. Sometimes, a really good movie can mean many things. Like, you could watch a movie that was really fucking sad, but you might have needed to feel that way in that moment. But anyways, I'm getting way off track. It's late. I'm sure a lot of you probably know where I'm going. But yeah, Everything Everywhere won 7 Oscars. This list here is not, it ain't coming up for me here. So, okay. So film editing went to Everything Everywhere. Visual effects went to Avatar, The Way of Water, no surprise. Original score, All Quiet on the Western Front. Live action short film went to An Irish Goodbye, never watched it. Animated short film went to The Boy, the Mole, The Fox and the Horse, never watched it. Achievement in sound, that went to Top Gun, that was my pick to win. Costume design went to Wakanda Forever, which did surprise me. I thought it should have went to Babylon. Cinematography went to All Quiet on the Western Front, which the fact that Top Gun, and let me just be honest, I don't love Top Gun like a lot of you do, and obviously that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but I've never seen the first film, so maybe I've been told this film really doesn't I've been told by many people, you don't need to watch the first film to watch this one. There's no direct, there's nothing in the story that you need to have necessarily watched the first one to understand what's happening. I don't know if that has to do with it. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But I could recognize that film was beautiful to look at. And the fact that it didn't get a cinematography nomination, that does baffle me. Once again, though, this award went to All Quiet on the Western Front. And I could give my gripes about that, but it'd be unfair because I haven't seen the film. So I'm kind of limited in my opinion in that regard. But let's move on to production design. All Quiet on the Western Front once again. And similar to costume design, I would have given this to Babylon. And to be honest with you, I think Babylon was criminally misunderstood and underrated by audiences and certainly by the Academy. I mean, this seems like the kind of movie the Academy would galvanize around. You know what I mean? It's very much that kind of artsy, and it's about Hollywood. The Academy is a sucker for movies about Hollywood and the history of Hollywood. So I'm surprised it didn't get more nominations. I had it as my number 3 favorite film of 2022. It didn't get a Best Picture nomination, which I think it should have. It didn't get any acting, which I easily think Diego Luna, or is it Diego Luna? What's this? The actor who played the character Manny in the film. I think he absolutely should have got a nomination for Best Actor. Actually, I don't know about Best Actor. He was great. Brad Pitt, 100% Best Supporting Actor. I don't see how he didn't get that. I would have probably taken out Barry Keoghan, swapped him with Brad Pitt. I know. I feel a lot of you yelling at me right now and throwing your pitchforks and throwing a fit. Just my opinion. But anyways, let's continue on to here. So international film, All Quiet on the Western Front. I'm not gonna go over song and documentary. Most people don't really care about that. Actor in a supporting role. Okay, so Ke Huy Quan. Hopefully I pronounce your name correctly, sir. Everything Everywhere All at Once. This was my pick to win. I think he absolutely deserved to win. I think he was the heart and soul of that film. And deservingly so, he gets the award. Actress in a supporting role. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. This is really the only win that I guess I just talked about Babylon and how that should have got a couple of those previous ones. But this was the one that stood out to me the most. And I'm sure this is going to be the one that stands out to a lot of you. Jamie Lee Curtis pulling in the Best Supporting Actress win. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Jamie Lee Curtis was was great in the film, and she was funny, and I enjoyed her performance. But I don't think she should have won this award. I think personally it should have gone to Hong Chau for The Whale. And I know a lot of you were hoping Angela Bassett should have won. And I would have picked Angela Bassett before I would have picked Jamie Lee Curtis. So let me just get that out the way. But my pick was always Hong Chau for The Whale. But I knew that she probably wasn't going to get it. But I've always been behind Hong Chau. And then my second pick, my runner-up, would have been Angela Bassett. And my third would have been Stephanie Hugh. And then my fourth would have been Carrie Condon from the Banshees. And then my last pick would have been Jamie Lee Curtis. So I personally, Jamie Lee Curtis for me, I don't know. That I'm not on board with. She did a good job, obviously. I mean, look, all the nominees did a great job. But I personally wouldn't have gone with her. Okay, so let's go to, is it not going to show? Okay, I skipped past some of it. I skipped past a lot. Okay, let's go to director. Director, Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan. Well, the Daniels, for all intents and purposes. Everything Everywhere. Once again, I would have picked them to win. I'm glad they got the win. Actress in a leading role. This surprised me, but it surprised me in a good way. Not like what I just talked about with Jamie Lee Curtis. See, I wanted Michelle Yeoh to win for Everything Everywhere for actress in a leading role, but I just didn't think the Academy was going to give it to her. I've heard all this talk about Tar and Kate Blanchett, which she was great. She was fantastic. But I really, really wanted Michelle Yeoh to win. So I'm happy she did. That genuinely surprised me. I was with my friends, and I don't think they expected her to win either, but she got it. So perfect. Actor in a leading role. I've been saying from the jump, I've been saying since I've watched this film on Christmas Day. Yes, I watched The Whale on Christmas Day. I don't know why. Brendan Fraser, absolutely. I don't think there was any discussion about it. I've seen all the other performances on this list except for Paul Mescal. I actually saw Bill Nye in Living, and look, I knew he wasn't going to win it, and once again, I don't think he should have. I think Brendan Fraser should have, and I'm glad he did. But Bill Nye, don't sleep on him. He did a fantastic job, and kind of a film that went kind of swept under the radar. But yeah, so Brendan Fraser won for The Whale. Happy about that. I'm glad that the Academy did not snub him, because I was getting worried he was going to go to Austin Butler. And don't get me wrong, I loved Elvis. You can go. I have a full video on the film. I really, really enjoyed it, probably more than most people. But I mean, okay, look, if Brendan Fraser hadn't won, I'd probably would have given it to Austin Butler. Colin Farrell in The Banshees of Inisherin, he did great. Probably the most nuanced performance. But for me, I think, I don't know. I just think Austin Butler would probably be my run-up. Okay, so original screenplay. Okay, so I got this wrong. I said, oh, no. Okay, never mind. I'm all over the place. Once again, it is late. Forgive me. Yeah, original screenplay, Everything Everywhere All at Once, 100%. Once again, that would have been my pick. Like, to write a film like that, I can't even imagine. So then adapted went to Women Talking, which we talked about earlier. I think it should have gone to Glass Onion. Kind of a snub there. Animated feature film. I'm not a big animated guy. I've only seen two films on this list. Excuse me. I've seen Turning Red. I did not like that film. Then Puss in Boots and The Last Wish. I did see that. Enjoyed it. Had a good time at the theater. Wasn't blown away. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Now, I've actually wanted to watch this film. I have a list of priorities, a list of things I got to do, and that's not even on the list. So at some point I'll get around, but I've seen the buzz, I've seen the discussion around it, and that wins animated feature film. Original song, Naatu from RRR. I watched RRR loosely. I was at a friend of mine's house, and I was doing work on my laptop, and he had it on in the background, so I wasn't closely paying attention to the film, but I was sort of kind of passively watching it, popping my head, over my computer here and there to see what was happening. So I didn't really watch the film, and I'll be honest, I don't even really remember this song, but they played it. Actually, they performed it at the Oscars, and it was pretty good. So, hey, there you go. Documentary feature, Navalny. I've scrolled past, I've scrolled, excuse me, past this documentary on Crave, which is essentially Canada's version of HBO Max, and looked interesting. Never watched it though. Documentary short, The Elephant Whisperers. Never watched it. International feature film. We already talked about that. That went to All Quiet on the Western Front. So that just leaves us with Best Picture, and of course that went to Everything Everywhere All at Once, coming in with 7 Oscars. Deserved every single one, maybe except for Jamie Lee Curtis. Would have probably given that to... I would have given that to either Angela Bassett or Hong Chau, so one or the other. But I wouldn't have given it to her. So other than that, I think the Oscars went well. It was overall a better experience. I didn't mind Kimmel as the host. I think last year they had Amy Schumer and the 2 other comedians. I didn't find them funny at all. I actually found them kind of offensive on a couple of instances. Not like to me, but I think some of the things they were saying to some of the other actors and stuff like that. I don't know. I think some of their attempts at making people laugh just didn't work out. And overall, obviously the slap and everything like that. So we all remember. Let me know what you guys think. Normally the fun thing to do, and I'm sure you're probably going to see clickbaity videos like this on YouTube within a few hours, probably, of people making these big headlines of this person got snubbed, so on and so forth. And I mean, look, I can't really sit here and say that there is any like glaring, snubs or mistakes made. I mean, look, I think Everything Everywhere is one of the best films of last year, and I think it absolutely deserved 99% of the awards it got. And I'm surprised it got all of those awards because, as I mentioned, I just had this feeling that Banshees was going to is the kind of film that the Academy kind of would like lean toward over Everything Everywhere. I feel like they were going to look at Everything Everywhere with that, prejudice mindset that they have for like Marvel films and stuff like that. I know it's not a Marvel film, but like with the multiverse, I thought that was going to be something that was going to sort of like discourage them from voting for it. But hey, I guess they saw the magic in that film that we all do, and I'm glad. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the only snub I would say really is the Batman. And Roger Deakins actually talked about this. I'm paraphrasing, but I read a quote that he said earlier because I totally forgot about the Batman. The Batman, in my opinion, was the best film of last year. I think it easily should have got a Best Picture nomination. 100% should have got a original score and cinematography. I don't know how, to be honest, I would have taken out Empire of Light, and that is a Roger Deakins film. I would have taken out that film that he did, and I think, he probably would have been okay with getting sub for the Batman. And once again, his quote was something along the lines of the best cinematography work of this year was a film that was not nominated, and he was referring to the Batman. And basically he went on to say that it's because of the snobbery. And I got to admit, I'm with him on that. Like, I don't know any of the Academy members. I've never even seen their faces. They're almost like like a special ops group that sort of work underground beneath us. Like what do they do all year? Do they just sit around and wait for every movie to come out and watch it? Like I've never thought of like a face like, oh, that guy is the Academy Award. And I just feel like at the end of the day, I mean, I enjoy watching the Oscars, but sometimes when these films, like some of these big blockbuster films, get neglected, it just goes back to this old adage, and it's snobbery, kind of like Roger Deakins said. But anyways, that's just my opinion on that. I'm not saying they're all. I'm not saying they're snobs to begin with, but it's that kind of snobbery behavior. Like when you go to film festivals, you often will talk to people. And it's, don't get me wrong, being at a film festival is a great environment. You're around very passionate fans and very passionate people, but there's always, the people that go to film festivals that are just like the snobby cinephile fans that think their judgment and they're the kind of people that think you can look at film objectively. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't like something that they'll like, they will criticize you and try and get in this intellectual pissing contest and say that, and you don't understand the thematics of it like I do, and I've watched Citizen Kane 47 times and you haven't, so I know film better than you do. So, people like that. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place here, but, it is what it is, right? Let me know what you guys think about the Oscars. So tonight was also the Last of Us finale. I thought this show was going to be 10 episodes, but I guess it was only 9. And overall, I thought the finale was pretty good. It was a really short episode. I think might have been the shortest we've seen thus far. And in the beginning of the episode, we see Ellie's mom, which is pretty interesting because if you've played the game, I think Ellie might have referenced her family and a little bit of her past in that regard. But I don't think you see her mom. And it was nice that they got the actual voice actress of Ellie to play her mom in a short little role in the beginning of the episode, so that was pretty good. Now, given that this is the finale, and if you've played the game, I'm going to talk about the game in the episode, so spoilers ahead. You know that that a lot was going to go down, and certainly a lot did. It was pretty much copy and paste what happened in the game, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know that sounds like a criticism to me. I think they've deviated in certain areas throughout the telling of this version of the story. They've remained pretty faithful to the game, but where they can and where they have deviated, it's made sense for the show. So I haven't really had any issues in regards to like the show remaining faithful or not to the actual game itself. So, but this was probably the most copy and paste we've seen, but it wasn't, once again, like that's not a bad thing for me. Like we see the whole, obviously the story itself is about Joel escorting Ellie to the Firefly so they can experiment on her and create a vaccine. And then, of course, throughout the journey, they form a bond and a kinship, and now she's more of like, an adopted daughter to Joel. But we see the whole thing go down. We see Joel go on a fucking mass killing spree and murdering everyone. And then at the end, we see him kill, which will obviously end up being Abby's father. They're obviously gonna do that. We know there's a second season, and if you pay close attention, that last shot, that close up of the surgeon on the floor with the bullet in his head, that was not by mistake. That was clearly for the fans and for the people that know what's coming, and even for new audiences if they've never even played the second game. I mean, you don't put a shot like that after a character that's already been shot in the head. You wouldn't put that extra focus on getting a close-up of them beyond just the shock value. You wouldn't do that if that didn't have some kind of significance. And obviously that will end up coming back into the fray when we get to the second season and we get to Abby, and that will sparkle a whole motivation for her character, and then thus creating the story for the second game. So, and it's actually been talked about by Craig Mazin, who's the showrunner for this, along with Neil Druckmann. They've discussed how they could split the second game into 2 seasons. And to me, that actually makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of ground that needs to be broken. There's also a lot of adaptation they can do because so much time has passed from the first and the second game, and we just pick up the second game right in Jackson. And we've already been introduced to Jackson, so we've already gotten that part over with. They could take a little bit more time, maybe introduce the WLF and Abby, and like now that I'm kind of thinking about it out loud, because as I talked about with the Oscar stuff, this is all just off the top of my head. I didn't really have time to normally create a bunch of notes. Like, obviously it's a podcast, so I never write out a script. I hope it certainly doesn't seem like I'm reading off a script. Like, I have my laptop in front of me, but for those of you that are watching, if you're wondering like what I'm looking at, I'm just monitoring the audio levels, making sure I'm not fucking screaming into the mic and therefore hurting your ears. So yeah, I'm not reading a script or anything, but I don't have the amount of notes that I normally do. So anyways, where am I even fucking going? I'm all over the place. Yeah. Splitting it into two parts. I think that makes sense. That gives them a lot of time to, because essentially The Last of Us Part 2 is two parts. You know, you have the first half of the game, which you're playing Ellie, and then obviously everything that happens with Joel. Joel gets killed. I feel like Joel will probably die. If that's the case, if they're going to split the second game up into two seasons, I feel like they'll save Joel's death to the end of the second season. And then that'll spark Abby's, whole arc, whole half of the second game. That'll probably be the third season. But the second season will probably be Ellie older. And I assume Bella Ramsey will return to play the character. And I mean, by the time they roll cameras, I think she's 19. So by the time they roll cameras, she'll be probably, 22. So, it'll line up. She'll look a little bit older because I think in the game she's 19, which is a friend of mine was telling me that. So yeah, I think it'll line up because there's some discussion that Bella Ramsey will get recast in the second season. I don't think so. I think audiences will be kind of pissed off because now we've grown an attachment to this particular actress as Ellie. Now, of course, if there was like a 20-year gap, I mean, you look at The Crown, for example, you have like 5 actresses playing, Queen Elizabeth. Obviously, the woman's lived an entire life. But in this case, Ellie jumps by like 4 or 5 years, and, given the production time, how long it's going to take to write, you can keep the same actress. But yeah, so good finale. Now let me just give you my overall thoughts on the show. I really like it. I would give it, we'll save the score for after. I really like it. I like certain elements about it. But and I was talking about this with a friend of mine, there's something that I have felt is missing about this show, but nothing glaringly obvious. Like, I can't put my finger on it. I really like it. It's a good show. One of the better game to screen adaptations we've seen, absolutely. But there's just there's something off that's never hooked me about this show. There are certainly great episodes. I mean, episode 3 with I'm losing the characters' names. I mean, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Episode 3 with the whole thing with Frank and what's the other guy's name? I can't remember. Episode 3, I think, is still probably the best episode. And honestly, the finale is probably second. I really like the finale, and I was getting worried. And I saw the runtime. It was like 44 minutes for the finale. Like we haven't even gotten close to the hospital, but they did it in a pretty cohesive way. Although the only gripe I have with this finale is that I wish the actual sequence of Joel, not that I want to watch somebody go on a killing spree, but yeah, I feel like we went through that sequence a little bit too fast, just in my opinion. He was still a badass. He was still, doing his thing, obviously. Morally, ethically, he's killing a lot of people that are probably innocent, absolutely. But I mean, it happens in the game, and I think overall they do a good job of translating it in the show. I think, even kind of getting rid of the music and just having like no sound, just the sound of the bullets flying back and forth, and just the sound of like the discussion between the henchmen, like he's over there, he's to the left, like you can hear that, but it's like kind of crowded by this soft ambient sound. And a lot of, I think, might be from the game, I don't know, but yeah, I like the show. But as I mentioned, normally when I have a criticism like this, I'm able to kind of point it out. But there's just something like maybe it just never fully hooked me like it did for some other people, but I still really enjoy it. And you know what? I overall would give it a 7.5 out of 10. It took me a while to get on board with Bella Ramsey as Ellie, but not in a toxic way, not like a lot of people I've seen talk about her. I have nothing against her as a performer. I think she did well, but I just had such a deep tie, to Ellie in the game, which is kind of my own fault. I think maybe if I had watched this first before the game, I think that might have, flipped. Never had a problem with Pedro Pascal as Joel. I bought him right from the jump. And even his brother Tommy. I wish we would have seen more of Tommy, but I mean, I assume going into the second season, we're going to see a lot more of him when we go back to Jackson. Now I say that about Bella Ramsey, but I'd say probably episode 4 is when is when it clicked for me, and then by then I was on board. And episode 8 was probably the best performance she gave as the character. That's when I was like, that's Ellie. That is Ellie. So yeah. It's actually funny now that I'm thinking about it out loud. Chris Stuckman talked about the show, and when he gave his review for the first episode, he said he talked about the choice, from a photography standpoint to shoot a lot of scenes handheld. And I don't mind that. And I'm not some cinematography nerd. I don't know a lot about this kind of stuff, so I'm kind of speaking from a uneducated position, so forgive me. But it seems like there was a lot of that handheld shooting, and for me, it works at times, but sometimes, I would have liked to see some kind of different shots. I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking. I probably am. Like I said, it's fucking late. It is 6 a.m. I haven't gone to sleep. But that's what I do for this. So that's what I do for this channel. I love doing this. I love doing the podcast. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe. I will ruin my sleep schedule to provide you good, entertaining content. But yeah, so Last of Us finale is done. Let me know what you guys thought about the show. Were you over the moon about it? Did you not like it? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, we're going to talk about Creed 3. I'm going to call it my review, I guess. Okay, so Creed 3. Have you guys checked out the film? It's been out for a couple of weeks now. I've seen it twice. My first viewing was an absolute nightmare to get to the theater, but can't blame nobody but myself because I decided to make the trek through a storm because I saw the film in Toronto, and I live just outside of the city of Toronto, so just that night, there happened to be a massive blizzard going on, so I had to trek through that. But I made it happen. I drove careful, stayed off the highway, and I made it there just fine. But my tickets were for, like I got advanced tickets for they called it a live IMAX premiere, and I was trying to figure out what that would entail because I knew it wasn't going to be the actual red carpet premiere because I don't think anybody wants to come down to fucking Toronto, Canada this time of year. It's a complete hellhole. It's freezing. And I knew that they had already done some other premieres in other markets, more, tropical places like, Australia and so on. So, then I was trying to figure out, okay, are we going to get some kind of merch or what am I paying the extra $20 for with my ticket? And all it was basically an hour of interviews live on the red carpet before the film. And I don't really care for that. If I want to see those interviews, I'll watch them after the film and they'll just get chopped up into separate clips on YouTube. I mean, and I'm the kind of person, man, I got to pee after an hour and a half, and some of these films are already clocking in at almost 3 hours nowadays. And it wasn't just me. This was a whole hour dedicated to following this guy, going around, taking you to talking to Jonathan Majors and Michael B. Jordan and so on. I'm that's cool and all, but I get my snacks, I get my goodies and shit. And not just me, we're all waiting to watch the film, and by the time the movie starts, well, everybody's got to pee. You know what I mean? So kind of frustrating. I don't know if that was worth the money. I guess I got to see the film a little bit earlier, but then I saw it again when it came out. So I saw it on the 27th of February, and then it came out on the 3rd. So then I saw it again on the 3rd, and my thoughts didn't really change that much. I did happen to put a few of the notes here. Jonathan Majors, easily the best part of the film. I talked about him recently I did a review. That was my first like review, if you guys know what I mean. That format that's become popular now. I gave him my shot with my own style. And I like Quantumania for what it's worth. I think it's better than what people are giving it credit for. Say what you will, but I think most people agree Jonathan Majors was the best part of Quantumania, and it's no different here. And it's because of his character, right? He's playing a character named Damian Anderson, who was really good friends with Adonis back when they were kids. And I'm not going to spoil what happens, but basically something happens involving a weapon, and maybe even Adonis should have serve some kind of consequence, maybe not jail time, but something maybe. But of course he fled the scene, which is a running theme in this film, which is part of, Damian's motivation is not only that he had to serve 18 years, but he feels like his friend got away scot-free. And he calls him a coward several times throughout the film. And, this is a character that doesn't, time is very much a theme in this film, as it is in a lot of movies. This is a character that's, he was a boxing prodigy before he went to jail, and he had time on his hand because he was so young. But now that he's like in his 30s, and it's very much a criticism throughout the film. You hear a lot of people say, Damian looks old, and so on. So, time is of the essence for him. Adonis, he's successful. He's already accomplished his, he's got his bag, he's got his money, he's got his belts. Dame's like, hey man, this is it. It's all or nothing. And I think his character's so interesting because out of all the, typical, boxing antagonists we've seen, he's probably the most nuanced, right? Down to the first interaction when essentially Damian re-enters Adonis's life when he finishes his incarceration, and they sit down and get some lunch, and they kind of talk about the direction that Damian's going to go. And, Adonis asks Damian, do you got work? And he's like, oh, I got a plan. And he tells him about how he wants to be a boxer, how he wants to continue basically picking up right from where he left off. And you can see, like, he's got this sense of, like, drive, but you see as he's explaining himself and, he's just trying to enjoy a nice conversation with Adonis, you could sense that sense of, like, impatience in him because, like, he's older, he's lost 18 years of his life, and like this is his time right now. And of course how he approaches getting back into the sport of boxing is a little bit sociopathic, if that's even a word. He basically uses Adonis as as his segue into it. He uses his name and his clout. After you find out everything that happened, you realize like he never even really cared to re-enter Adonis's life and actually be his friend again. It was more or less like just kind of like, I need you right now. And then after he had that first fight, he got that exposure, he pretty much said bye-bye. But there was still that bad blood between them, which inevitably led up to the fight. So an interesting antagonist. You understand the motivation. So that's definitely for me, that was the biggest positive. Another thing I liked, of course, is Adonis. Now we're seeing Adonis in a different light, right? Because the last time we saw him, and the last two times we've seen him, he had that hunger in him. He was still fighting. In this film, it seems like he's taken a step back because he's accomplished everything he set out to do, right? He's got the money now. He's got the belts. Like I said, he's a world champion. Now he can kind of be a family man. I mean, he's got a daughter now in the film. And he's just sort of become kind of like a promoter and a businessman. He's the one organizing a lot of these fights now. He's become the guy in the chair. And he's kind of taken a step back from boxing until inevitably Damian kind of brings him back in. So a nice approach to that. I like the story. The soundtrack was a big thing that I enjoyed too. The very first song we hear at the gate when we fade into the film was called The Watcher by Dr. Dre. Like that song, been listening to it a lot. Michael B. Jordan's direction was a pleasant surprise for me. I was a little bit apprehensive about that going into this film. You're going to let a guy who's, who's a great actor, but he's never directed any film. You're going to let him out the gate direct a studio project? I mean, well, not let him, but you're going to, as a studio executive, you're going to basically what I'm trying to say is, from a studio perspective, that's kind of a risk, you know what I mean? But then again, there's risks involved with everything in this business. So, but it ended up, going out pretty well. I actually think he's a really good director. And if there's one scene that I could point to, in terms of him showing his directing prowess, was that fight in the end, in the climax of the film between Damien and Adonis. It wasn't your typical boxing fight. There was a few great shots. The first one that I think of that comes to mind is that one where Damien punches Adonis right in the abdominal, and you could see his back arching. He's almost trying to swallow the punch as best as he can. And you see like the beads of sweat are just bouncing off his back. I'm not a big anime guy, but a lot of people that I've spoken to that are into anime have said that kind of shot draws a lot of parallels to like fight sequences in anime. And apparently Michael B. Jordan is a big anime fan himself, so maybe he implemented some of that to pay homage. Who knows? And furthermore, going into that fight, there's like that sequence when it almost feels like they both internally block out the crowd, and it's just essentially them in a ring, making it really personal between them, because it is a very personal story. And there's even a few times where Damien's got Adonis against the ropes, but instead of the ropes, we see like the jail cell, obviously referring to the past 18 years that Damien served. So yeah, those are the positives. I enjoy the film. In terms of negatives, like there's not like a particular glaring flaw that ever stood out to me throughout the film, but I was never blown away at the same time. Like as a boxing movie, it's good, but it doesn't really break new ground. But then again, the amount of these films that have come out over the past 10, 20, 30 years, I'm not sure there's much ground that is left to break, just in my opinion. But yeah, let's get into the rankings. Now, I thought it'd be fun, instead of just giving you my normal overall ranking, which I will still give you, at the end, I'm going to do these little sub-categories that'll give you my numerical rankings for, like a blank out of 10, and then I'll end with a letter grade as the overall grade. So let's go. Writing, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. Performances, 9 out of 10. Direction, 7.5 out of 10. Cinematography, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. Rewatchability, 6.5 out of 10. Overall, I'm going to give it a B. Once again, good film. Pretty good directorial debut for Michael B. Jordan. Like I said, I had my doubts. But then again, at the same time, you think about it, he's worked with some of the most talented filmmakers in this business, so I'm sure he's learned a lot along the way. So he's had his film school, so to speak, and I'm excited to see him, direct and obviously perform in more projects. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Unbashful. I am tapped out at this point. It is late. It is 6:47 a.m. I'm going to try to get about an hour of sleep. I don't mind fucking up my sleep schedule to make some entertaining content for the few people that watch this show. But if you guys don't have time to watch, well, you can listen on all audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you normally listen to your podcasts or music. I'm sure you will find me. I know you will find me there. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It'll help push this in the algorithm to get more people to check out the channel. This is a very small channel. I'm continuing to try and build and grow it. So, subscribing, it's free. You don't got to do it. I'd really appreciate it if you could. Leave a like as well. And just, let's just have a discussion in the comments. Let me know how you felt about this year's Oscars. Did your picks end up, did you get your picks right? Did you get your picks wrong? Did you agree with who won? So on and so forth. Let me know down in the comments below. Guys, girls, everyone, that'll be it for me. I'll see you on the next one.